Hi there, I'm board certified professional organizer Kathy Burns. I'm really glad you're here. This podcast is designed for busy entrepreneurs just like you who want to take better control of your business and move forward with less stress and more success. If this is your first time listening, then thanks for coming. The Organized Energized podcast is produced for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at thepodcast.organizedandenergize.com. Come back often and feel free to add this podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow me on Twitter at Organized Energy and Facebook. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get into the show. Hi, everyone. This is Kathy with Organize and Energize. Don't you know, since you're here, today I'm going to talk with Rob Burns. He's a man after my heart, been around him for a few years, actually married for quite some time. And I wanted to introduce you to him because he's a storyteller from way back. And as entrepreneurs, we need to learn how to use stories and storytell within our businesses. And Rob's a master at that. He's a documentarian and owns TreeHouse Studios, where he produces documentaries for nonprofits. And he's in the process of creating another movie called What is Manifesting, the movie. So let's jump into the conversation and let's learn about how to do storytelling with Rob. Hey everyone, this is Kathy and I'm back, and I am here with someone I've known for quite a little bit of a time. His name is Robert Burns and he is a storyteller from way back. And I wanted to have him on the podcast because he knows a lot about telling stories, spinning yards, and creating engagement with your audience. And as entrepreneurs, we all want to do that. So welcome, Rob, to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Yeah, also we know each other a little bit more, just because we've been married for what, 30 something years. So
yeah, 30 something years. You know, after doing 100 podcasts, I figured I might as well have my honey on. And, you know, people really, well, I'm in a long training program for storytelling, and I thought that you were the perfect person to interview to talk about storytelling and spinning a yarn. So talk to me a little bit about your background, Rob, and why you're doing what you're doing now.
yeah, you know, it's been an evolution. I mean, I've been on the marketing side doing copywriting and marketing, marketing, copywriting and things like that for probably what, 25 plus years, something, something like that. And really for me, I really wanted to evolve and focus more on the creative side, as opposed just to kind of this strict technical marketing aspect. And so it's been kind of a gradual movement going that direction. And storytelling was always, I've always been under the premise that everything is a story. I mean, if just one picture, that whole adage, a picture is 1,000 words, and all that good kind of stuff. So if you look at under that lens, then almost everything you do is a story, and then you can start framing your work that way. And so a great reason from the marketing standpoint that stories are so great is it really kind of lets you know who that person is, so people buy from you when they know, like, trust you. And so and from our earliest days, storytelling was really how we communicated things and let people know about different things, like, hey, we were foraging over in that valley, and then all of a sudden, a lion showed up, so, and then there was a whole story about the lion encounter, and so things like that. So that's really kind of why I gravitated towards storytelling. So.
Yeah, it's like the hieroglyphics in the cave, right? It's like, oh, okay, beast.
Right. Yeah.
Beast, ooh, captured, ooh.
Yeah, who captured who, or how this, some story of a great hunt, or things like that. And then, because those were the things that were important in those days, and so they were really kind of the first marketing pieces, I guess, if you really want to,
Absolutely. I remember, back then it was like word of mouth or pictorial. And then I remember when I was in advertising a long time ago that, the advertorial that had the picture that I'm sorry, that had the story about the owner was way more effective than just the ad because people want to know who that person is that they're going to do business with. And they remember stories. Now we flash forward, a couple decades and now we're in video. And so I know video is your game now. So talk to me about a story of one of your clients that you did a documentary for. What happened with the storytelling of that?
Yeah. So I do primarily documentaries now, and I still do some marketing work and brand stories or founder stories, things like that. But primarily it's documentaries, and when I work with nonprofits, they have something called a gala video, and it's usually once or a couple times a year um, for their fundraising, and it's telling their story, and um, it's really the perfect piece where people can know, like, trust, and understand what that nonprofit's about. And then if you do the film right, it makes a connection between the person watching the film, the nonprofit, and whatever that cause is for the nonprofit. And so in the case of, I think you're probably talking about the humble design one.
Yeah, the humble design
Yeah.
one. Awesome.
Yeah. So that one was great because and it was really interesting because I was when when I first came across when we first started talking about it, I was semi not interested in it because what humble design was, they were a group of interior designers, and they had this big warehouse full of furniture, and then people that were unhoused, they would go in when they got reintroduced to housing. They would go in and furnish these places, these new places. And I learned so much about that whole world. Uh, so and I think most of the times when I work with nonprofits, it's almost, I'm learning as much as I'm creating a film. And so some of the things I learned were that so in San Diego, this is we did for their San Diego chapter. I think at the time there were about 9,800 people that were homeless, and about 2 to 5% of the homeless people you see on the street, those are typically the people that are the stereotypical homeless people, where they have a tent on a sidewalk, or they're sleeping on a sidewalk and that kind of thing. And but that's only 2 to 5% of the homeless people, and those are usually people that were probably suffering from PTSD or addiction, or have mental struggles, things like that. And so they just kind of, that's really where they're at, and they did, they're not even at a place where they could try to find housing, kind of thing. um the majority of homeless people are people where they were just one paycheck away, and something happened, and now they're living in their car, or they're couch surfing, or they're had abuse issues, or things like that, that they were trying to get away from. And that's the majority of those people. And then the other thing I learned is in San Diego, it's about 11 years before you can get housing. So
Wow.
um and then what really sold me on humble design was the fact um that the attrition rate for somebody that finally does get reintroduced to housing is about 90%, because they would go and they would get a place, and it was just a box and there was nothing in it. And
Mm.
so they didn't, they were like, well, it's, this isn't any different than when I was homeless, and there were no options. And so um with Humble, they would make a house a home. And
Yeah.
so, and some really big things came out of it. So one of the things was, um, now moms have a kitchen that's stocked where they can cook real food. And
Mm.
so now, instead of buying mick food from a food desert, and which is the least expensive, but probably the worst, worst health wise for you. Now they can actually cook real meals, and then kids have beds to sleep in and desks to study on. And then part of the story, so one of the people that were actually in Humble Design, in the Humble story, she she actually was incarcerated for 15 years and then got out, and then she had two kids, and they were living on the street. They got put into housing, and Humble was there. She was like one of the very first people that Humble had helped quite a while ago. And so now one of their kids uh, is an architect, and the other kid, I think, is going to school for physics. So, and none of that could, it could have happened if they were just living in a car, or just didn't have the resources. And so those kids, they got a good night's sleep, and not only that, but they decorated it so it kind of fit in with whoever the person was. Like there was another person who they were from Hawaii, and so they decorated the whole place in a Hawaiian theme. And so they have actually like real furniture manufacturers and people that donate, and so it's really nice. So it's really a home. And so the attrition rate for Humble people that for Humble Design that they go through is only 5%. So only 5% of people wind up going back to being homeless. And so it really did make a huge difference. And so that whole thing was a giant learning process for me, which I love. And so so how the storytelling aspect went was really connecting the mission of what Humble does, and why it was important, and then showing these people like how it changed their lives, and how it actually really did good. And so that for me was just kind of a just the best of everything kind of deal. So
Yeah, and I know what I found the most astounding as you work through that whole project is not realizing that when homeless get housed, they basically just have a bag of stuff. That's all they have. And so they get into this apartment that's empty before Humble gets unless they're a Humble client, then they just have a box and, like you say, a bag of clothes, maybe some old ratty clothes. And so Humble will come in and actually design it. Now, I know after the gala video, or after the video that you produced called Home, by the way, and we'll put the link down below if you guys want to watch it. It's an amazing movie about the homeless and about Humble. After they released that gala video, I know that they got a lot of revenue during a few galas in a row, just by someone telling their story. Heartfelt, people are crying. I remember that a lot of people were crying, not realizing what it's all about to be homeless. And they raised quite a bit of money just from that one video.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want to go numbers, but like the first time it was a good 6 figures, some just from the premiere, and then they did 2 or 3 more events that were where they showed the video to use it as a tool, and they were kind of in that range too. So it's really cool. And really, it's like Humble is a perfect example of why a story can really be so effective. Because I think if somebody, like when I was first talking to him, I was honestly just pretty disinterested. I was just like, this is, I'm thinking, how is this going to save the world or fix climate change or solve people's problems, or it's just decorators. And I personally couldn't get past it, and until I really started doing a deep dive with them on what it was about, and how how it does affect changes. And then I was just completely sold. And I think that is the power of the story. Is the story made that connection, and it connected with me, where I was just like, this is super important, and now, and it showed why was it important, how did it help, all of those things that we want to know. And it made a connection, it made this heartfelt connection between the viewer and Humble Design and the people that were in the film.
Yeah, and I think the plus side of it, they got more clients, they got more sponsors, they got more volunteers.
Mhm.
You know, they probably are getting more grants because they're more, they're more phrase forward. You know, they're in, what are they in, 4 different cities in the
8 now.
US?
Yeah.
They're in what?
8.
8 cities in the Krause US is Humble Design, so they're expanding. So
Yeah.
that is the power of storytelling. Now, as entrepreneurs, I think it's so very important that we tell our own story. I work a lot on, you know, my background, why I do what I do. People love to hear why we're doing what we're doing. And so you're doing these founder stories. Can you talk about those just a little bit? Because I think everyone needs a founder story, and video obviously is the way to go.
Yeah, exactly. And really the trick is it's not really about the subject of the story. It's about the person that's watching the story. Because if you do a story and it's just about, me, and why I'm so great and how successful I am and how I can make you successful or whatever, that kind of thing, people are just bored. But if they can see a little piece of themselves in that person that is the subject of the story, then it's just infinitely more effective. And that's really the goal. And so with the founder stories, because there's a lot of people that are, say, speakers or authors or experts or their personality is connected to the brand, and even sometimes just the story of a brand. And then really that's the goal is you make that connection, and you try to, depending on what it's about, to make an emotional connection, so that person at bare minimum relates to the founder and the founder story, and best case scenario, sees themselves as part of it, and can really, as part of that tribe, and makes that connection. So.
Yeah, I think it comes down to vulnerability, saying who you really are. And these are my faults. And people are like, yeah, I feel like that too, and that's very important.
Exactly. Exactly. How many times have you seen an ad or a story, and it's, some guru selling something, and it's just about how awesome they are and how they're living their best life. And like a lot of times that'll just create anxiety for me. I'm just like, this is just, and they make it so that they're just kind of they frame themselves are kind of that at that pinnacle, unachievable to most people, and then it'll just kind of throw in, and you can do it too, kind of thing. And everybody says like, no. But if you talk about somebody that has become very successful, and they start out the story, they were living in their car, or and my rule is you just have to be 100% integrous as far as like what I'm telling a story. Like, I'm not going to make up a story for somebody, and I'm not going to try to find something that's not there, because it doesn't do anybody a favor. It doesn't do the person that's making the video, and it just won't work. So, but everybody has a story, and everybody has that hero, Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, where they started out, and then they had this mission or this goal that they were just a regular person, and then this thing happened to them, and so to put them on this journey, and maybe they had a little bit of success, and then then all of a sudden failure just sideswiped them, and then they figured out whatever the dilemma was, and the great battle of whatever, where some maybe some mental internal battle that they had, and then it was success. And then people can relate to that, because there's very few people that just aren't struggling, and if you can relate to those people, and then show that there is a path, and it's a real path, and that they can understand it, then that's going to really make a huge difference. And that's where kind of the secret sauce is.
Yeah, I love that. And you're a master storyteller. And I think that, a lot of it, I think that's why Instagram and all that, people are walking around talking, showing people their life. that's also a resonation. You're like, oh, okay. I mean, sometimes, unless they're a douchey, right? But walking
Yeah.
around saying, I am doing this and doing that. But having an actual founder story produced is a notch up, because it's elevated to the whole hero's journey, as opposed to just being little snippets of someone's life, so to speak.
Yeah, like a 5 to 15 minute video, but you shoot it like a movie, and it's a real story. So it has this, this cinematic emotional effect on people. And that really is what really works. And that, it sets it aside. I think, I think that the social media stuff where people are less than perfect, I think it is actually more effective than people with the perfect bodies, or driving a Lambo, or because I think there's so much of that it just creates anxiety in people. And there's a lot of stuff coming out about that on social media, where people are just like, all these people are just living their best life, and they're just, and look at me, kind of thing. But being a real person and being relatable is much more powerful. And even in the films, where people that are kind of, a founder story or a brand story, where it's a speaker or an author or a person that's part of their brand, where they show their vulnerabilities and they show their failures and they show how they overcame those, and that's what people want to see, because they want to know it's a real person they're buying from, not just, some person just mimicking copy that they think will sell.
And that's so funny, because that's the whole reason that I do this podcast, is to let people know that they're not alone, that we all do the ups and downs, we all do the zigzags. Life is never perfect, right? But
Yeah.
we rise above. And how do we do that? How do we overcome challenges? And that's the whole idea behind Organize and Energize, the podcast, quite honestly. This reminds me, as you're speaking, Rob, I just keep thinking of Southwest. It just keeps blowing in my mind. So, as you know, I love Southwest. I've always really loved Southwest. They've always taken good care of me, always taken care of me. But I remember watching the movie about the founder of Southwest, and it was his hero's journey, who he is. He would talk to everybody. I mean, they showed all of his flaws and blemishes, and they had to really reel him in, because he would never be on time for meetings, because he was always chit-chatting with people on the way, and they'd have to wrangle him in. And it really, and then the whole airline was built on love, because the guy was love personified. And that made me even more loyal to Southwest, because then they have the heart. So it's like the whole story. I didn't know about the founder. I didn't know why there was a heart in Southwest. Now I know the whole story, and now I'm loyal, or I'm the loyalist probably person ever for Southwest. I would always fly them if I had an option. And it just drove it even closer to me, to my heart, by knowing why he's there and who this guy is.
Right. Well, Southwest is a perfect example. So if you remember, during COVID, we started watching that whole series, The Kindness Diaries, with Leon Lagothis. And Leon Lagothis was this guy, and it was perfect timing, because it was during lockdown, and you watch the news for 5 seconds and you're like, oh man, the world's just burning down and everybody hates each other, and it's just all this just just polarity, and people are just like that. And it was just, it was depressing. And this whole series that was on Netflix, Leon would basically, and he was pretty wealthy. I think he made his money. He was like an investment banker or something in England, and he just kind of gave it up. But he kind of made his money, and so he started doing this series, and he would show up each season, like one part of the world. Like one part, I think he did from he drove all the way from Argentina to Los Angeles. And the rule is like he had a VW Bug, like an old 67 or 66 VW Bug. And it was named Kindness One. And it's kind of a long story, but there's a good point to it. And so the rule is he couldn't accept any money. The only thing he could accept from people was food, fuel, um, lodging or assistance, but no money.
No money.
And so he would just travel, and he would just run up to these people and was like, hey, could I stay at your house or what, this, that, that kind of a deal. And the people that he did stay at, they would just have these amazing stories. There was this one guy, I can't remember, in one part of Central America, where this guy lived in a box, and and he's like, hey, I don't have anything, but you can share the side of the box, and it's safe. It's not safe to be out around, and you can just sleep here with me, and here's half of my food and this, that. And the thing is, and then at the end, Leon would actually help these people out. Like he would, like, I think he bought the guy a house or something afterwards, kind of like, and they knew nothing about him. And so that was the story. And so kind of a long story short, to connect Southwest is Leon actually did a Kindness Diaries initiative with Southwest. And so Southwest had this whole web series where Southwest was kind of the sponsor, but he would do kind of his Kindness Diaries thing. And so that I think is like a perfect example. And it's like just perfect because it's not, sometimes people try to kind of do virtue signaling or this or that, but it was kind of this perfect connection of this guy that actually did these things in Southwest who thought that was kind of cool. And so that's a great kind of a win-win connection where they're connecting stories and empathy and a huge brand. So
I didn't even realize that. That's interesting.
yeah.
That went way past me. But yeah, I think that's the thing, empathy, right? And people can't empathize unless they can relate. And people can't relate unless you show who you really are. And being vulnerable is where it's really at. And I think in any kind of sales, you're out there listening, right? Anybody that you speak with that's a potential client or a potential partner, if you're just who you are and you're real, they're either going to resonate or they aren't. And more than likely, they will resonate because they will, again, be able to empathize and say, oh, yeah, I feel that way too sometimes. Right?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And really for two reasons. One is, as I'd mentioned that, don't try to, act fake compassionate, or don't try to create this story or virtue signal because people will spot that off in just 1 second, in and then it's worse than if you were just like a, hey, buy my stuff kind of person. So the message has to be real and the story has to be real. And I promise you, everybody has a message and a story that'll connect. And then the other thing is too, is if you do manage to pull it off and you kind of create this whole scenario because you're trying to fit in with this certain group of people that's really not you, that's just a huge recipe for failure too, because I think the people that don't drink your Kool-Aid are just as valuable as the people that do, because those are the people that you'll get started in something and then it just doesn't work out, and then it just doesn't resonate, and then you just put so much time and energy, and people think I'm crazy all the time because I'll just be kind of like, and you're like, well, this is just this huge opportunity. And we had that talk earlier of, where somebody was trying to connect me with this other just kind of huge group, but I was just like, I just know, man, if I get involved with that, it's just not, I know me, and it's not going to work. And I'm, my value system didn't fit in with that value system. And I'm not judging that value system. I'm just saying, for me, it didn't resonate, and it's going to show. Like for me, I'm the worst person in the world to have a fakey face, because you're going to tell like exactly what's on my mind. So I think, be you. And the thing is too, you have to think, when the internet came out, there were a couple billion less people on Earth. So there's so many people, and there's so many people now that are on the internet that are involved, that no matter who you are, there's going to be more than enough people that are going to fit into that tribe. So don't try to be something you're not. Just be you, and you're going to be infinitely more successful, and you're going to tell better stories, and you're also going to filter out those people that are not, resonate with your message.
Yeah, and it goes back to a few podcasts back. We were talking about avatars, and I spent so many thousands of dollars trying to figure out who my avatar is, and really who my avatar is me.
Yeah.
And people that resonate with me are going to be the people that are my clients. And if you're out there listening, your avatar is you, someone who is interested in what you're interested in, someone who thinks like you think, because you're going to resonate, you're going to empathize with each other, you're going to be able to grow together. And, if you have, you try to fit into this other crowd, the clique, so to speak, it probably isn't going to work in a long-term haul. It might work, might work quickly for a little bit, but it will fade away. So I think that's great. So this is my my question of the year for this podcast is, when you have a success, Rob, how do you celebrate success?
Usually with my beautiful wife. So.
That was a setup. No.
So, well, and that's actually pretty true. So, for us, it'll be maybe we'll go on an adventure or go sit under some trees or cactuses or, things like that. And
Yeah.
really, and really just kind of spend time being grateful for whatever that success was for. So,
Yeah. I
that's
think
my big
stopping and spending time for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So we have to talk about organizing a little bit. You're super organized. What's your favorite organizing hack or system that you use?
I'm a big fan of round filing.
The circular can system.
Yeah, it's a circular can system. And I am um I try I try with as much diligence as I can to not let things stick to me as far as stuff. I'm in kind of an anti-stuff as as before we were married, I think I had a futon mattress and a set of chef's knives and
Yeah.
and my clothes and I was happy as a clam. So for me, I don't need to accumulate a lot of things. Just just maybe an awesome wife and
That's helpful for me. I am the collector, of course. He married me and he got the stuff. That's the story.
lots of bargains. Yeah. Bargains everywhere.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But I know that you like workflowy and I like Trello.
Oh, yeah.
And
So it's tools. Go ahead.
yeah, talk to me about workflow. For those of you out there, I love Trello because it's visual and it's like little post-it notes, and that keeps me organized. But workflowy, some people out there might really resonate with this. So let's talk about workflow just for a sec.
Yeah, workflow is really interesting because most people don't like it because when you first look at it, you're just like, it's so simple. But that's really the beauty of it. And workflow is where really you can kind of create these tasks and these lists and subtasks and sublists, and they all kind of drop down. And I've literally mapped out just super massive, just kind of complicated projects or systems or like I do a lot of SOPs using workflowy, an entire film I use workflowy for. And what's great is because you can look at just certain sections and you can expand and collapse and you can do things like you could tag. So in the film, there's all these people that are doing all these different things. And so you can like hashtag a name or at symbol a name, and you can put it next to that task. And then you can actually just click on that name, and then it shows all the things inside a workflow that are related to that person or that task. And so it looks really simple, but probably the most complicated, just integral things that I've done, I've used workflowy for. So, and it's like $5 a month or something. It's ridiculous. So
Yeah, you use it really brilliantly, and you can put a lot of stuff in there. So check out Workflow if you're looking for task management, or actually for assignment management to know who's doing what and when. And if you get overwhelmed by looking at gigantic lists, you can break it down and only look at one thing. So
yeah, like
that's
project management.
So if you could turn back in time, Rob, and tell your 18-year-old self something, what advice would you give him?
I would say don't be afraid to fail, because that's the fastest path forward. So.
Yeah, good stuff.
Mm.
Okay, so I know you probably have a valuable free resource that you could offer people. Is there anything that you would want to offer? Do you have a link, or I know we're going to drop the home video in there, and so that you can watch, what a little mini gala documentary, and actually you get really you'll become very educated about the homeless, not just here in San Diego, but all over the world, and who they are and why they're there. A lot of very surprising things that you don't really understand about them. But if you have anything else that you want to provide, then we'll go ahead and drop the link below. I see you thinking, so you might have.
Yeah. I'm so busy doing projects these days. I'm not really like, I don't have any kind of email capture or anything like that kind of deal. But yeah, I mean anybody that might be interested in films, or if they want to just kind of see how, I structure things, because most of the things I do are pretty short, so you can kind of see like a 5-minute story, like we did the Grandma Sparky one, and that was like 5 or 8 minutes. And you could go to treehousestudio.studio. And then if you look at the our work section, you can kind of check it out. And so, and if you're interested in maybe having a brand story or something like that, yeah, just go to there and just reach out. And
Perfect.
Rob at treehousestudios.studio. And that's another way. And it's plural.
You got it. Well, guess what? We're at the end, and I can't believe it's taken me this long to interview you, but I felt a little bit weird because you are my husband and my honey. But I know that there's a lot that can be learned from storytelling, and I hope you folks have enjoyed this episode. Think about a story for yourself. What is the story that you tell? Are you vulnerable? Are people able to empathize with you? Or are you just being like the bright, shiny, perfect person? Like, that's not what you want to be, right? So thanks for having you on the show. Thanks for coming, Rob.
Thanks for having me on the show. And
until next week, we'll see you then. Take care. Hey, thanks for listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you want to hear more, feel free to subscribe on the platform of your choice. Also, if you feel so inclined, I would truly appreciate a good rating from you to me. Have a stellar day.